Money isn't real. Doesn't matter. It only seems like it does.
Through training camp, I have to see.
Those are pretty damn good averages.
Hi, Alex Himes here, and it's time to get it right.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the latest episode of Get It Right with Alex Himes. Today we have a bit of a treat for you guys. Good buddy and friend of mine, Luca Rosano of TheWaterboyReport up north in Canada, decided to have me on this week to discuss all things NBA, from the Toronto Raptors to my Boston Celtics to the Eastern Conference as a whole, what we're missing right now in the sports world, and how things are going both here in Los Angeles and up in Canada in regards to the coronavirus epidemic. So please, I hope you guys enjoy this latest episode of the Luca Rosano Show. Thank you again, Luca, for having me on. Let's get right to it.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of the Luca Rosano Show. I'm your host, Luca Rosano, and I got a very special guest on the line, FS1 sports analyst and the host of the Get It Right podcast on YouTube and all platforms, Mr. Alex Himes, who's coming to us from LA. Alex, how you doing, man?
Luca, it's good to see you, man. It's good to be back. I hope you guys are staying safe, washing your hands up there, doing a better job than we are down here. And it's good to see you, man.
Yeah, it's really good to see you. And I actually want to begin the show here by asking you about that with LA being on a lockdown and this whole coronavirus taking the world by storm. I mean, this is a reality now. We can't leave our houses. We're stuck inside making content, which isn't that bad of a thing. But I just want to get your reaction to this whole coronavirus ordeal and how it's affected you and your way of life over there in LA.
You know, the city has put on a safer at home order, which basically means it's, like I was telling you before, it's somewhere between a true lockdown where they're telling you to stay indoors and at the point where the governor is basically saying you are better off at home, hence why it's safer at home to be okay, to be safe, to avoid being in contact with someone or transmitting the disease to someone. I myself have been at home with my roommate for a majority of the time. I've basically seen just my father, my roommate, and Michael from one of my podcasts, Michael the PG as he would call himself. And it's very funny because we see that there are people taking it seriously, right? Remember when Tom Hanks was the first person to come out publicly as an actor or someone of, major notoriety to say that he had this, right? And then we had Rudy Gobert come out, and that's what affected the sports world. Now we're seeing a guy like Karl Anthony Towns come out, and it seems like every time someone comes forward to say how serious this is, people start taking it a little bit more seriously as opposed to being proactive about it and staying indoors. I mean, I was telling you that there are guys that are playing basketball at Venice Beach still at this very moment. They're exposing themselves and others. And it's not just about exposing yourself to disease. You could be someone that suffers from it, or you could be someone that carries it. It's about being around people that are more susceptible. So if you are a carrier, you have it yourself and you don't realize it, like family members, the elderly could get it. I myself happen to have two sisters, one of which is about to give birth to my second niece, which I'm blessed with. My other sister, who has a weaker immune system. And I have my grandparents and my parents themselves who are older, right? That's why I myself have basically taken every precaution to not see them. The only person I'm seeing is my father, and that's because he's a doctor and they have the stereotype of being ignorant around their own health. So he's okay with that. But for us down here, it's about getting creative now. Like you said, creating your own content at home. Like I'm doing videos of my podcast, getting guests to come on, and then going on live on Facebook and Instagram while I'm doing edits, showing people how to do what I do best, right? And on top of that, like I'm making random videos. Like I made a video the other day on the World Star Hip Hop page on Facebook where I made a grilled cheese sandwich, my favorite grilled cheese recipe. It's just about getting creative. Yeah, it's about getting creative and just having fun with it. And I myself have taken this to be a benefit, working out every day, getting back to truly what's my own, trying to figure out what makes me happy, reading again, just setting little goals every day to achieve those. And I'm sure you're doing the same because you're still on the content grind. You're still doing what makes you happy. And you have the look of someone that hasn't gone, kind of insane just yet. Cabin fever hasn't set in just yet.
I thought I gave off that look, to be honest with you, because I haven't shaven and who knows how long, and I haven't gotten a haircut in who knows how long. But yeah, you hit it on the head right there. I mean, it's so ignorant for young people, especially around our age, to think, oh, I'm not gonna let this stop me from living my life. I'm gonna go about my day. I'm gonna go outside. I'm not gonna take the precautions. No, like stay inside. Don't put other people at risk, because at the end of the day, it's about your responsibility and being held accountable for the other people who do live around you. Stay inside, and you can always find things to do. Like Alex was saying, he's keeping himself busy. I'm keeping myself busy. And that's the biggest thing we got to get across here. Like, just make use of your time inside. And I like what you said there, where it's like you're not looking at this as you're not looking at this negatively. Like, you're trying to be optimistic during this time, and you are being productive during this time, which is really good to know.
How are you holding up through all this?
Yeah, you know what, man? It's mixed emotions. So, I mean, at first, it didn't really hit me that this was serious. But then after sports collectively were put on pause and the days mounted, and now this is probably my 8th day in quarantine of like not leaving my house. Like, it's starting to get to me a little bit, like mentally, where it's just like my life before has changed like everybody else's, and I'm just sitting here like, okay, like what's next? Every day looks the same. When is this gonna all end? So it has been a battle, but at the same time, I think you got to keep yourself busy and you got to keep your mind right. So working out, doing things that you like, reading, like you said, those things will help this process, because I think everybody's in that point where like we don't know how long this is going to be. Like, we don't know the inevitability of all this. So you just got to be optimistic. That's all you can be during this time.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest recommendation I've made to my friends is there are those courses online that you can take for free from edx.com, which connects you with a bunch of the Ivy League universities and their free online courses. I myself have signed up for a course from Harvard where I'm doing Jewish studies. It's a 4-week long course, and the benefit of it is I keep myself busy. I have something to do every day, a little bit more that pushes me to do something that I wouldn't normally do, especially because I've been out of education for a while. And it gives you a certificate by the end of it that you can add on your resume that's from Harvard. So I'll take that. I'm okay with that. And it's a free option. And for those that want their certificate, it's only $125. Like, it's 4 weeks of your time. They recommend 5 to 10, 5 to 10 hours a week. And it's minimal time invested for something that keeps you busy, and you get something out of it at the end.
Wow. So there you go, guys. There's always something you can do. I mean, he is furthering his education during this time. Good on you. I should take a note out of your book. Let's switch gears here. Let's get into basketball related stuff, Alex. Let's first address the elephant in the room. I want to get your opinion on this. Nobody knows the answer, but I want to get your gut feeling. Do you think the NBA will eventually come back this season, or will it ultimately be canceled?
Honestly, I genuinely believe as we sit where we sit right now, the NBA will be canceled. And I know that sounds sad, but that's because we don't know. And that's the biggest thing I've been harping on with everyone is we don't know how long this is going to last. We originally heard it would be a 4-week thing, right? We heard that 4 weeks of a shutdown and then we'll reassess. Then it got to the point where the CDC said that we shouldn't have any sporting events for 8 weeks, which is 2.5 months. And on top of that, now we don't even know really how long this is going to extend furthermore, because we all assume that because flu season goes within the seasons, and now summer comes and then the flu season dies down, right? And it goes like in a cycle. We don't know. That's the biggest problem with this disease in particular. There are no questions answered. All we know is how it's affecting people to some degree, because there's so many variants of how many people deal with specific symptoms. There's no true underlying symptom. There's no true underlying anything. I think the NBA, as it stands now, doesn't know, and they claim that they're shooting for, a August-September finals period. But I think this actually works out to the benefit of the NBA in particular. I think this actually resets what they've been trying to do. They've been trying to change the schedule to not mesh and start around the same time as the NFL season, correct?
That's right.
So this gives them the opportunity to say, oh, this is something we've been working on for a while. We can now use this as the skipping stone, as the, test to see how it works. So they restart either the season or they restart, hypothetically speaking, let's say they go with the finals in August or September, right? Then that ends. They can do training over the fall season or the fall time period. Then they do summer league to restart the season a little early in late October, early November. and then they start the season in late December, early January. So there's no overlap with the NFL. This gives them the true barometer to test the interest of fans, to test really how people are going to react. And mind you, the numbers are going to be overinflated because no sports right now means once it comes back, everyone is going to want to watch everything from badminton to baseball to cricket to hockey to every little thing. I don't care what it is. Yeah, right. I find myself watching ESPN The Ocho and watching the Cornhole League, which by far is one of the craziest, most intense things I've ever watched. As someone that went to school in the South, I get the importance and the fun of it. But you know what I mean? Like the NBA is just, it's so far out where I don't want to make any type of assumption. But if I'm going to make an educated guess, I'd say the NBA season is over right now, but I'm okay with it. I am genuinely okay with it.
Yeah, that's interesting to speculate too. I saw that they were looking into maybe getting the season restarted officially moving forward on Christmas, and that would be the official start date to the NBA season. And to be honest with you, I'm okay with it because, like you said, you don't have direct competition with the NFL. The NFL season gets into playoff time around that time, and then you have the NBA season coming in with no competition from the other major sport they have to worry about. I think this is going to set up the NBA to do some of the types of things that they wanted to do, like you said, maybe even shorten the season, maybe have a couple of, in-season tournaments that they were all talking about before this went down. So, I mean, the NBA could use this as a blessing in disguise in the sense where they can restructure things how they wanted to without messing, other things. So, I'm all for that. I'm obviously hoping the NBA season could come back as a basketball fan, but I agree. I mean, we don't know how long it's going to be. There's no set in, stone date where everybody's literally playing it day by day at this point, which just makes it more, makes the mystery of the unknown even that much more, great. So, I think I would agree with you. I think if you were to ask me, I don't think the NBA is going to come back. And that's going to suck because that's going to make me miss a ton of things like my Raptors. They were, on their pursuit potentially for, trying to repeat as champions. What are some of the things you'll miss the most if the NBA season is in fact canned?
We were just, from a bias standpoint, I'll start there. We were just starting to see the evolution of Jason Tatum. Us New England sports fans lost within a 36-day span. We lost Mookie Betts and we lost Tom Brady, the two presumptive faces of New England sports as of now. Two of the four faces, right? We're including like each one from each franchise. Now that there is no true frontrunner other than a couple of the guys from the Bruins, and there are a couple of them. I'm not going to go individual, right? Because there are a couple guys that have been there, won, yada, yada. But in terms of the Celtics in particular, we haven't had a face since Isaiah Thomas. We had Kyrie Irving for a hot second, and that was a mess. Now we have Jason Tatum, and we are seeing the evolution of him. We're seeing him take over. Right as the season ended, we saw him win Eastern Conference Player of the Month, averaging 30 points per game within that time, going off. The Celtics were on a weird streak of being their inability to guard opposing scoring guards or point guards was just through the roof, and I don't want to. That was just a headache within and of itself to report and also to cover while I was at work. But Jason Tatum is what I'm going to miss most from the NBA season. But what I do miss otherwise is watching these other teams starting to develop. Like the Lakers were developing true chemistry. Now, mind you, they were doing well already, but we were really seeing, over the span of the season, them actually click and gel. We're seeing the Raptors, whom I got to tell you, I wrote a lot about them because I'm super impressed with how they've played this season. We're seeing that they are proving that they aren't a system team in terms of built around a superstar. They don't necessarily need Kawhi. He was a benefit to the system. He helped supercharge what was going on, and spearhead the way for what Nick Nurse is doing. But we're seeing a lot of their evolution, especially with a lot of their guys like Siakam and Van Vliet have stepped up. Norman Powell has been unbelievably good this season, and OG Anunoby was starting to show flashes. I had him picked to be my most improved player of the year going into this season.
Yeah, I did too.
See, and we're starting to also see Giannis develop into the true MVP, like not just MVP, but like capital M, capital V, capital P. That type of dominant player. And I'm going to miss a lot of the little rivalries that we've seen. Oh, and I'll also miss, of all things, NBA players hating on James Dolan because he needs to sell the Knicks already. Please do so, James.
Yeah, those are all great things. I'm gonna miss the NBA playoffs, man, because there were so many built-up narratives. There were so many things that you were looking forward to see. A potential Pelicans-Lakers first-round matchup if the Pelicans were able to snag that 8 seed.
I hate people
Obviously,
I hate people that said that. I got to tell you, because that's disrespect towards Ja Morant and what the Grizzlies were doing. Don't get me wrong. The idea of seeing Zion play him was great, but Ja Morant is the rookie of the year no matter what. Zion only played a handful of games where we saw over an elongated period what Ja was doing. He ended up having a triple-double at one point, really evolving his game over the season, and it's disrespectful to say that they were the presumptive players to go into the playoffs, being the Pelicans, and not the Grizzlies. And it's even more disrespectful to say that Zion deserves to be the rookie of the year over Ja.
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that. Like, if you ask me today, who's my rookie of the year, it's definitely Ja because he did it over a longer period of time. But from a rating standpoint,
yes, of course, agree with you.
Done, like Pelicans and Lakers, you got like sign me up. They do much better in terms of ratings. You have the future face of the NBA taking on the current face of the NBA. And then even from that perspective of the playoffs, like I wanted to see how things were going to shake up in the East because like I've said many times, like the East is very deep. Like I could make a case for any teams 1 through 6 to get to a final. And then on the other side, I think we're all making, headway and we're all looking forward to the eventual clash of LA, who the superior team was going to be, Lakers or Clippers. So those are things that I'm going to miss as a fan. And let's shift gears now back into the East because you looked at me funny there when I said I can make a case for every single team in the East, 1 through 6, to get to an NBA Finals. To me, this year has been one of those years where the East is simply wide open. Now, do you feel the same? Who are your favorites to get out of the East if we're still talking about this season?
Look, we always talk about how you give the previous champions the nod to being the presumptive favorite until someone else defeats them, right? But unfortunately for the Raptors, there's been an evolution in Milwaukee. Each year, Giannis has gotten better and better. So for me, the Bucks are the presumptive favorites to make it out of the East, correct? And then the second favorite, of course, I'm going to go biased, but there's a reason for it. The evolution of the game of Jason Tatum, the way that they've been able to use positionless basketball to their advantage. They've basically implemented similar to what the Golden State system was when it was without Kevin Durant. The positionless basketball, the ability to play and have every score from 1 through 5 go off at one night. And Daniel Tice, let me tell you, that guy has been an evolution, a revelation, if you will, for the Celtics. At the beginning of the year, we went in thinking that this guy, or the Celtics, were going to suffer against opposing big men. Yet what it turned out was we're suffering against opposing guards. So yes, I'm going to end my charade on going on with the Celtics. But it's number 1, the Bucks. Number 2, the Celtics. Number 3 is the Toronto Raptors, just because they've done what I've said. They've provided a system that has evolved. They've made it so that everyone has to be aware. They've proven, there are a couple games I'll bring up later when we talk about the Raptors and Celtics in particular, but they have proven through their system and through the players that have bought in, they don't need a specific guy. It's nice having a, Kawhi Leonard. It's nice having a Pascal Siakam healthy to go play in a game, but they've proven even without him that they can win the tough games against tough teams and tough opponents. So to me, that's 1 through 3 in regards to, the Miami Heat. I think they're the equivalent to the 2016 Atlanta Hawks, or if you want to go even further back, the late 2000s Atlanta Hawks with Joe Johnson, Mike Bibby, Marvin Williams, Al Horford, and those guys. They are
So you don't have any faith in this Heat team?
No, it's not that. It's that they're young. I like Jimmy Butler, and I love the ability to mentor the young guns that they have. They're a great, fun team to watch. But in terms of a playoff series, the first round, they're a lock. Second round playoff series, I think that they'll flounder. I think they'd go down in 6 games because they don't have the experience ready. And this is coming from a guy who watched Tyler Hero play when he was at UK. I love Tyler. I love watching Bam play too. Watching these UK guys ball out, especially with the Heat, is marvelous. But they don't have the tutelage yet. They don't have the ability to rise up in that occasion. Jimmy Butler is a 1B type of player, and I say that with all the love towards Jimmy Buckets. He is not a 1A scorer. He is a 1B player, and they do not have a dominant 1A player yet. So that's why, for me, they are a playoff pretender, if you will. A big season surprise, which everyone, including myself, and I'm sure you, discredited going into the year, having Jimmy Butler. They'd be maybe like somewhere fringe playoff team, like 7 through 10 maybe, 7 through 9, if you will. they've been the surprise. The Indiana Pacers, too soon because Victor Oladipo's just getting back to form, and it's great to see, and unfortunately he did so against my Celtics, and they almost won against the Celtics too, which was tough to watch. Outside of that, I don't consider anyone else a true mystique, a true matchup nightmare. The Brooklyn Nets are the only other team that I like because they play in a very fun way. Karis LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie are a lot of fun to watch play, right? But, Kyrie isn't healthy. KD is not there this season. And I don't even think when they are there that they will be a championship contending team. I think they will be an Eastern Conference Finals team and maybe a second seed in the East. But I don't see them being a legitimate title contender.
You didn't even mention Philadelphia. Is that because of their whole road woes? Because, we know what they could do at home. They're at times lights out. But Philadelphia, let's say the season does come back in a couple months from now. You'll have Embiid and Simmons ready to go. Are you putting any stock in them? Or
they're a glorified 4-5 seed to me. They peaked last year against your Raptors. Their best opportunity was against your Raptors. They made a couple of bad moves this offseason. I love Al Horford. He came from my Celtics, but I knew when they signed him to get the best. Al Horford, statistically speaking, was the best player defensively against Joel Embiid. In the NBA, he was the best defender against Embiid, and we saw the evidence of it. They signed him, made the tallest lineup in the NBA, with Simmons going through all the way to Embiid, right? And what did they do? By the end of the season, we saw Horford on the bench in multiple articles saying he was not happy with his role and the team wasn't necessarily utilizing him in a way that was conducive for them to win. It was all regrets on all sides. They've gone in and tried to make the right moves. I give Brett Brown a lot of credit because he is a good coach and he had to deal with the Sam Hinkie years and now he's dealing with a bunch of players who are a lot of talented guys. But I don't think they win with Ben Simmons as their point guard. I think that's an asterisk that needs to be said and laid out. I don't think Ben Simmons is going to be a point guard for the 76ers that will lead them to a finals. They need to change that, and they need to rely on Joel Embiid. He's the guy that you want. People are talking about, do you trade Embiid? Do you trade Simmons? It's like the Shaq-Kobe dilemma. Looks like it worked out pretty nicely for the Lakers when they traded Shaq, but in this case, Simmons can't shoot. I don't care that he made three-pointers.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, you can't have a point guard that can't, shoot a shot.
Especially in today's NBA. It's not like Rajon Rondo when he was leading the league, and he was the best point guard for a 3-year span over Chris Paul. Yes, I said it, from 2010 to 2013. Rajon Rondo was a ball-distributing player and had the players around him that he elevated their stock. He elevated their value, and they were true clutch players. We don't have that anymore. There's no concept of a true point guard. A point guard is now a scorer and a facilitator, but scorer first, facilitator second. And for the 76ers, I didn't mention them for a reason, because they're a glorified 4-5 seed that just makes it to the second round and does the same thing the Heat does. But I give the Heat more respect because Eric Spoelstra has been there, done it, and proven it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I'm not putting any stock into the Sixers. I don't believe in them. Indiana intrigues me, but I still think they're a couple years away from being a legitimate team to get out of the East.
Agreed.
The Heat, to me, if they can play the Bucks in the second round, which would be that second round matchup, they match up better, I think, against the Bucks than they would against a Raptors team or your Celtics team. You saw some of the type of success they're able to have this season. What do they won 2 out of 3 against the Bucks. So, and then having that X factor with Spoelstra being there, obviously being an NBA champion, I think that's a team the Bucks don't want to see. So I would put the Heat in that type of dark horse category. But to me, it's Bucks, it's Raptors, or it's your Celtics. And I actually went as far as saying, if things work out and the Raptors and the Celtics do play each other in the second round, whoever wins that series, I got going to the NBA Finals. Because
said the same thing as you.
The Celtics interest me, and you were talking about it before with Jason Tatum. I loved watching him play. I'm very high on him. I think he's going to be a top 5 player over the next decade. He's got every bit of skill you want out of, a wing player who can do so many things, get to the basket, makes it look so easy. And then you guys still got Jaylen Brown. And I know, watching that Christmas Day game, Jaylen Brown torched the Raptors that day. So this Celtics team, they're deep, they're well coached, and they're proving that they could be a viable threat in the East. So yeah, like I said, it's going to be Raptors or Celtics. Whoever wins that series gets to the finals. But the only reason why I would give the slight edge to the Raptors, as cliche as it sounds, is because of home court advantage. And from this series, looking at this series, with the exception of the last 2 games, this has been a series dominated by whoever's at home. So this could be one of those series where it gets to a game 7 and, you have your home crowd be that little bit more of a push to get the job done. But I'm telling you, sign me up, man. Like, if we're healthy and you guys are healthy, that's going to be a hell of a series.
And that's what I want. I want it to be known that I like the Raptors squad. I think I've already said this a couple times in the show, but I will talk very highly of the Raptors because they have been the surprise team for me. I myself counted them out slightly this year. I had them as a 4-5 seed just because Kawhi leaves. You think of that effect, especially with the effect that he has on a franchise. We saw it with San Antonio when he left. We see what happens with the Clippers when he joins their squad, right? And mind you, when he's available and not out with load management. But the Raptors are a true contender. Let's not get it twisted. The Raptors are a legitimate team. They've played above expectations. They are proving doubters wrong. They're proving people in the NBA, yeah, we are champions for a reason. It's not just because of one guy. I like the Raptors a lot. I just want to make that very clear.
So with the whole Raptors and Celtics potentially meeting in the second round if the NBA season, in fact, does resume, let's talk about that matchup for a second here. These two teams met 3 times this past season, and the Celtics actually took 2 out of 3. And the Raptors were missing Marc Gasol in the last 2 games of that series, one of which was, of course, the Celtics spoiling Christmas for the Raptors, our first ever Christmas Day game ever, and Jaylen Brown decides to go off. So what would be your keys for both teams in a series? We'll start with, of course, your Celtics. What do the Celtics need to do to beat the Raptors in a best of 7? And let's say the Raptors have home court being the 2 seed.
For the Celtics, the one thing that I've noticed from all these games that stuck out was the guard play, in particular from Jaylen Brown and even Kemba Walker, right? The first game, it was led by Brown and Tatum with 25 each. In the next 2 games, Brown had 30 points and Walker ended up having 30. And sure, the third game was a blowout win. Personally, for me, I don't consider blowout wins to tell us a lot, especially because the second game, game 2, without Siakam, 2 of those games without Gasol, you don't really get a true barometer for what's going on with the teams, right? So for me, I think the Celtics, the biggest emphasis that we can have against the Raptors is utilizing our guard play to our advantage. We happen to have, I would argue, 2 of the best defensive guards and also arguably the defensive player of the year in Marcus Smart. So we have Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown happens to be an offensive revelation. And Marcus Smart, for some reason, has decided that the 3-point shot is his shot and is taking it and now leads and has the Celtic record for most threes in a game, which should not be a thing. That should not be a thing. I love Marcus Smart, but I still have text messages from years ago of my cousin and I saying, if Marcus Smart shoots another 3, I'm going to kill him. Look, the Celtics are set up to play the Raptors well from every position. I genuinely believe that going small when you have a starting lineup of Kemba, Jaylen Brown, you have Hayward, or you have Tatum at the 3, you have Hayward at the 4, and then you have Tice at the 5 is their best lineup against the Raptors because it's a fast lineup. They have the ability to switch at all positions and length at each position themselves. All those guys can shoot threes, which causes a problem for the Raptors because, sure, Marc Gasol can extend the floor himself, but he's slower than Daniel Tice. Let's be fair at this point. A fair assessment is he's slower. So having a guy like Daniel Tice who can spread the floor out opens the lanes up for guys like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kemba, and even Gordon Hayward, who can all create their own shot at any given point in the game. And I think that's the Raptors' biggest problem when they face the Celtics is that all of these guys from 1 through 4 and arguably 5, I'm going to throw Tyson there for floaters and putbacks, right? Because 1 through 4 can create their own shot, which makes it a big problem for the Raptors in particular, who have to spread out, giving the open lanes for guys like Tatum. And Tatum in particular, when in a playoff series, especially with how we were going, we would have had that 4th game in the books in a couple days after this. The schedule was canceled. I think the Raptors were scheduled to play the Celtics like the 3rd game after the schedule was canceled, right?
Oh, yeah, it was that Friday because I was supposed to have you on the show at that time. That's right.
And we would have actually seen what the teams would have looked like at that given point with Tatum erupting at that time. I think Tatum in the postseason creates a major problem for the Raptors in particular, even though Siakam, whom I think would be the guy to defend him for the majority of the series themselves and also for the games in its entirety, right? I think Tatum creates a major problem for them. Yes, Siakam can create his own shot, but in the clutch, Jason Tatum is that much more deadly now, more than ever. So having to guard him means guys like Kemba Walker, mind you, cardiac Kemba Walker can get an open shot, can cross someone up and get the step back like he normally likes to do, gives a shot in the corner for Jaylen Brown for that three, gives Marcus Smart a shot in the corner for the three. The Celtics just have so much versatility to spread the floor that I think they actually get the edge in the matchup. And mind you, I think this is a very close series. And if it were to go down, I think it would be 7 games, and each game would be a win by no more than 5-6 points, especially because postseason basketball, with everyone healthy, mind you, we're going with asterisks of everyone being healthy. I think it creates a heavy atmosphere of true playoff basketball. Two teams that have a reason to go prove what they have. Tatum being in the Eastern Conference Finals as a rookie against LeBron James, going to Game 7 and being within arguably 10 minutes of an NBA Finals berth in his rookie year, coming back and facing a squad who are the champions, whom, as you and I both agree, actually, are the team from this series, if they were to play each other, would be the presumptive Eastern Conference Finals winners. Either the Raptors or the Celtics. I love the Bucks, but I think you and I both understand and agree that if you either are able to get Giannis his open shots and guard everyone else out on the perimeter, the Raptors and the Celtics are the two teams that can stop guys like Middleton, DiVincenzo, the Lopez brothers, of all things, the Lopez brothers, both of them now, Ersan Ilyasova, from getting their own shots off, meaning Giannis has to do all the work himself. I think we're the two teams that can do that. And I think that the Raptors versus the Celtics is a great playoff series, but the Celtics have the edge just because they have Brad Stevens, who is by far the second best coach in all of basketball. It won't ever happen until Greg Popovich retires. I know you might disagree with that, but we have Brad Stevens. We have a young and budding all-star superstar in Jason Tatum and a budding all-star in Jaylen Brown. And Kemba Walker is something different.
Yeah, I think he would be the X factor for you guys. Let's get back there. I know you're very high on Stevens, but I think if the season ends today, you got to give Coach of the Year to Nick Nurse because of
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Okay, so you agree with that?
100%.
Nick Nurse from an overall basketball.
Yes, no, not by the season. Nick Nurse for me is the Coach of the Year, 100%. Before going into the season, barring Zion was healthy, I had Alvin Gentry winning Coach of the Year because I knew he was getting a lot of young players and he was going to be able to utilize them properly like he did back in Phoenix with Nash and those guys. But with what Nick Nurse is doing, especially in the time when they were without Siakam for a good amount of time, they had a lot of good wins, one of which I'll bring up in a little bit, but they proved that Nick Nurse's system is not something that's a fluke. It's not an all-star system, and I'm sure you'll agree with that. Nick Nurse is the Coach of the Year, 100%.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, he's and especially given how the Raptors, and this to me is just, eye-popping when looking at this Raptors team, is I think they're ranked in the top 5 in most man game lost, and they're still in the 2nd seed. If you told me that at the beginning of the season, I was like you. I thought the Raptors were going to be a 4th, 5th place team, but here they are under the radar, exceeding expectations, and they're working with what they got. Like, that just speaks volumes to this Raptors team. That eventual matchup with the Celtics would be very interesting, and again, if both teams were healthy, it could go either way. It would go to 7 games, and I agree. You would literally have all those games go down to the wire because I think that's the Raptors' biggest problem right now is the fact that they can't stay healthy. I mean, we've had so many bad injuries at bad times to guys like Norman Powell, who you said at the beginning, playing some of his best basketball of his career. He can't seem to stay healthy. Fred VanVleet missing some time. Siakam missing some time. Our big front court players missing some time in Gasol and Serge Ibaka. So for sure, the Raptors would have to have a healthy team to have a chance against the Boston Celtics. Another thing that the Raptors would have to address is, yes, who is going to be that guy who steps up? We play great basketball collectively. We have guys step up on every given night. But when you look at the Celtics, you already know Tatum's going to be that guy with a couple minutes left in the game. He's going to be your go-to guy. For the Raptors, I want to see Siakam blossom into that role. We've seen many times this season that he's kind of come up small in times. So the postseason was something I was looking forward to on if Siakam can answer that call and be that go-to guy to combat playing, Jason Tatum on the Celtics or Giannis Antetokounmpo on the Milwaukee Bucks. The Raptors' ability to hit the three and hit their shots would be big. Their consistency needs to be there, though, because there have been times this season where they literally can't hit a wide open three. They have their droughts, like any team, of course. And also the glass, because there were a couple of games that we played against you. We did get out-rebounded. The Raptors would need to just, have the edge on the glass, because the Celtics did a really good job of that, especially in that Christmas game. Second chance points, cleaning up the glass, and making good on turnovers as well. So listen, I don't want to play you guys, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I've been a Celtics hater, because I haven't. Like, I've been praising the Celtics as much as I've been praising the Raptors.
You hear what I'm saying with you? We're both on the same side of this, and I got to tell you, I think the one person that we're neglecting to mention is, I wrote this down. I have it right in my notes. See, the Celtics, like I touched on earlier, going at the end of the season, our biggest issue was opposing guard play, right? We gave Donovan Mitchell, Russell Westbrook, Colin Sexton, all career nights, and not to mention Karis LeVert, which the game that I managed to cover while at work, which was not fun, mind you, not fun at all. The biggest problem has been the opposing guard play, and I think the biggest X factor for you guys isn't Siakam. I think it's actually Kyle Lowry. Lowry has played well in the majority of these games. I mean, the first game he had 29 points. The third game he had 30 and 7. Look, Kyle Lowry is a problem for a lot of teams, but in particular right now where the Celtics are sitting, because their inability to stop opposing guards, which to me, I can't stress enough how much of a mind-boggling issue that is, considering we, like I've said, have Jaylen Brown, have Jason Tatum, have guys like Marcus Smart who can play defense, and also Brad Wanamaker, who I want to give a shout out to because he spent a lot of time overseas, got his reputation together, managed to make it with the Celtics, and now is like a fan favorite in a way. Brad Wanamaker, shout out to you. You are killing it, man, and I love you. Handsome Squidward.
I love his name.
Yeah, Brad Wanamaker. And my buddy at work calls him Handsome Squidward, which I think is so sad. But I love Kyle Lowry's play, and I think he's the biggest X factor and the biggest problem that the Celtics will face. Not Fred VanVleet, because I like VanVleet's game, but VanVleet, although he is a champion, hasn't been there, hasn't been in the trenches, hasn't been in war like Kyle Lowry has year in and year out. He is going to be the biggest problem because he can extend the floor for the Raptors. He can be a playmaker, and he's just the biggest overall threat. He spreads the floor for this team and dishes out a lot of great passes to guys who get those shots and knock them down. He will be the biggest X factor in the series for me, just because of how well he has played against the Celtics so far, mixed with our inability to just shut down opposing guards. And my other note was the Celtics proved to be a problem this series due to their positionless basketball, like I mentioned, and in particular, the matchup nightmare of Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, just about to say that. I think that's your X factor for the Celtics, because if you can get that consistent secondary scoring like you did in that Christmas Day game, that's going to prove to be a huge heap of problems for the Toronto Raptors. So Jaylen Brown, I think if he and Tatum can play similarly to what you guys did a couple years ago, pushing the King to the brink, that's going to be a tough team to beat.
Man, the good old days, man.
Those were the good old days. And I like what you mentioned there about Kyle Lowry, because a lot of people, they like to hate on him. They like to say, oh, he's the Raptors' biggest problem. But, you look at that championship run, he was playing some of his best basketball after that game one scoreless game. He got it together. The way he was able to distribute the basketball, be that secondary scorer on given nights with a Kawhi Leonard. He was huge during that run. So we need Kyle Lowry to be reminiscent of that. And another guy I'm going to mention for the Raptors' sake is Norman Powell. Norman Powell, if he's healthy, coming off the bench, he can be that huge boost for the Toronto Raptors, because the Raptors, they have been, when everybody's healthy and on, they have had one of the better benches in the NBA. Having Norman Powell lead that second unit and get his shot going. Let's call it what it is. Like, Raptors fans watching this, Norman Powell has been our best consistent scorer this season. Like, he had flashes of brilliance, and it's a shame that he had those injuries when they happened, because he could have very well made a huge case to win Most Improved Player of the Year, just because of how much he elevated his game and how much of an impact he was on our team, especially when we had scoreless droughts. Because the thing about this Raptors team, our defense will always be there, but at times where we struggled is when our offense sputtered. And Norman Powell, a lot of the times, came in, he set the tempo, and he bailed us out by going on a mini scoring run of his own. So I think that is my bigger X factor for the Raptors for second unit play of Norman Powell. Can he come in, weather the storm, and can he be healthy and consistent and give us that production that he's been giving us in the regular season?
You hit the nail on the head, too, in terms of bench production. This is not something I like to talk about in terms of my Celtics because our bench has been lackluster thus far, and that's to say the least. And the Raptors bench has been one of the best benches in the association. I mean, we'll go through. I wrote down my top 3 favorite games from the Raptors this season because they're big impact games that said a lot to me about this team, right? And
let's hear them. Let's hear them. I'm actually curious who you got written down there.
So 11-25, the rematch of the shot. 76ers at the Raptors, right? This was a game that said a lot to me because in terms of the 76ers, Josh Richardson led them with 25 points, right? Right? Does that not say a lot to you? Josh Richardson led them with 25 points.
That's the game where Embiid scored, 0?
That's my next point, is that even more, Embiid was held to 0 of 11 shooting on 0 points. 0 of 11 shooting. Joel Embiid, the man that earlier I said would be the guy you go all in on as opposed to Ben Simmons. Yes, I'm kind of contradicting myself, but the point is the Raptors held him to 0 points on 0 of 11 shooting. And the Raptors were led by Pascal Siakam with 25-7 and Van Vliet with 24-8. Oh, and by the way, did I mention in total they had 6 double-figure scores? 6 double-figure scores. And they're being led in a balanced attack against a team where they faced last season in a crucial game that was won by the guy whom eventually left. And mind you, I say that with all love because I assume that this is the case with the Raptors fans. There's all love with Kawhi. There's no hate. There's no disdain.
I have his jersey hung up on my wall for a reason.
Yeah.
Let's call it what it is.
You had him for one season. He won a ring. And I saw this interview with Raptors fans. They were doing this right after Kawhi left, right? One fan said, the man wanted to go home. He won one here and wanted to go home. How can we hate him for that? And I'm like, that is the true example of what a fan should be. A true fan of a team should understand not just the player's perspective, but also the human perspective of it. So that was my that was my third favorite game. My second was the 12-14 game, Nets at Raptors. Siakam led the way, and this was a game that really told me a lot about Siakam in particular. He led the way with 30-10-5. 30-10-5. And Norman Powell, that night, 25 points himself. The only other outstanding performer was for the Nets, and that was Spencer Dinwiddie with 24-8. They won that game. Yeah, he went off
that game.
One of my favorite games, but my most impressive win of this season, in my notes right here with this favorite game that said a lot, was the 12-22 game. I think you know what I'm talking about now. Mavericks at Raptors.
I had a feeling you were going to say this.
This is the game. This is the game that tells me so much about this Raptors squad. Didn't have Pascal Siakam, and sure, the Mavericks didn't have Luca. Not you, but Luka Doncic. They didn't have him. So you're looking at the 2 top players from each squad, arguably top players. I'm going to give Pascal Siakam the top player now because that's the presumptive look. And Luka, come on, it's Luka Doncic. Let's be real. They didn't have both those guys. So what ended up happening? They were down 86-63 going into the fourth quarter. Without Siakam, they led one of the best comebacks in the fourth quarter. They dropped 47 points in the fourth quarter to win 110-107. Lowry led the way, like we were talking about, the X factor, 32-10-8. Rondé Hollis-Jeffers, he had 18-9. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson had 18-9. And Chris Boucher, he had 21-7. I covered that game myself.
Including that electrifying dunk.
Yes, I covered that game at work. I was the one that put the highlight for that game together. That game said a lot to me about this Raptor squad. It proved that the team was a well-rounded, oiled machine, that it wasn't a superstar-driven squad. It was a all-team-in mentality, and when needed, you had 2 guys that could step up to be that superstar for the team in that moment between Kyle Lowry and, when he's healthy and back, Pascal Siakam. Sure, they play their best basketball when Siakam is there, but that win told me a lot more about this Raptor squad than any other game this season. And I think it's important that fans recognize that was a game that should cement the Raptors as true contenders in this NBA season. You know, they didn't have Pascal, and sure, Luka wasn't in the game, but that means it's quasi-even because you had even balanced scoring from the Mavericks. They were led by Jalen Brunson and had all their starters in double-figure scoring with 2 or 3 players in the 20s. which tells you that they weren't just playing, decent bad basketball. They were playing legitimate basketball with guys who were scoring and going out there and hustling. And the Raptors, they just out-hustled them. 47 points in the fourth quarter. 47 points.
That's their MO. The Raptors have been one of the deepest teams in the NBA, and that wasn't the only game in which they had multiple players in double figures. We've seen it over the course of a season leading into this point. They've had nights where they've had 5, 6, 7 players scoring double figures, and that to me would be their advantage in a series against any team. The fact that on any given night, anybody can really go off. They have a collection of guys who can go off, and that depth will be their forte because they don't have that presumptive number one guy. Yes, it is Siakam on paper, but we've seen all season long it's all these guys making big time plays, making big time shots when the spotlight is on. So the Raptors' depth and their defense is pretty much their bread and butter in terms of potentially getting back to an NBA Finals. And that series against the Celtics, it would come down to small little things, maybe even officiating, a call not going our way, because, of course, the referees hate the Raptors, but that's a discussion for another day.
Okay. The same thing for the Celtics, man. The same thing for the Celtics. I'll send you a link after this game. There is one ref in particular, and I forget his name right now, but it's the one ref that no team wants because they know they will universally get screwed by this one ref. I forget. I think it was the Houston game. This man had 5 calls against the Celtics in the fourth quarter where it wasn't there. It wasn't there, man. The Celtics are hated just as much.
The Raptors can shake your hands on that, man, because that would be a series that could come down to calls, can come down to a major, well, hopefully not, but like an injury happening. Like the smallest of differences would settle that series. So I mean, if we can't get the NBA season back, why don't we hop online? We'll play 2K. You'll be the Celtics. I'll play the Raptors. We'll play a best of 7, and we'll decide who wins this series that way if the NBA doesn't come back. Is that a deal?
Bet on it. And I still have to come out to Toronto considering I lost the bet last year with the
for
Bucks.
Those of you who aren't aware of the bet, pretty much we had made a bet last year on his show, and the bet was as follows. Whichever team made it to the final, or whichever team didn't make it to the final, Celtics or Raptors, would have to visit that other person. So Alex, being a Celtics fan, his Celtics didn't make the finals. My Raptors did. He was supposed to come visit me here in Toronto, but I was broke and I couldn't afford to get him a ticket. So I'm like,
oh, man, no, don't even put that on you. If anything, I was the one that was dead broke, and, man, work is hustling, man. Especially right now that there's no sports, I got a lot of time. So if anything, Toronto's looking a lot nicer. Canada in a general is looking a lot nicer than lockdown here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, well, I think we're headed to that but hopefully not. Alex, that was a ton of fun. Before we get out of here, I got one last segment that I want to run with you. I do this with all my guests. Rapid fire. You down?
For sure. I'm getting my sleeves rolled up.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, I should check the time on mine too.
Yeah. Well, I'm on 1 bar left, so it's going to be close.
Damn, man. Do you want to charge and we can do it later, or do you want to just knock it out?
I think we can knock it out because it's just rapid fire.
Okay.
So we'll knock it out, yeah. Okay, 3, 2, 1. All right, first rapid fire question for Mr. Alex Himes. Favorite book you've ever read? Ever?
Oh, man. Favorite book that I've ever read? It would have to be a tie between The Art of War by Sun Tzu and The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger.
Those sound like solid books. I definitely got to go check them out. Next question. If you can ball with one current NBA player, who would it be?
If I can ball with one current NBA player? Ooh, come on. Smooth, Jason Tatum.
Next question. Who's your favorite Celtic of all time?
Oh.
Tatum or somebody else?
Man, all time, I'm going to have to break it down into 2 categories, current and past. Current, definitely going to be Jason Tatum. Past, I got to go with the truth, man. I have his jersey hanging up right there. Paul Pierce.
Truth. I like that. You did mention to me off air that at one point you did support this Raptors team. So who's your favorite Raptor of all time?
Oh, man. Favorite Raptor of all time? God. All right. I'm not going to go the cop-out way. I'm going to go the way of someone that I actually watched and was watching during my era. And I got to say, I loved the way Chris Bosh played. I loved Chris Bosh as a Toronto Raptor. He was very different than what we saw in Miami, and unfortunately we didn't get to see a lot more of Chris Bosh because of his heart ailment and also the blood clots. So I'm going to have to give it to Chris Bosh because some of his best years, I understand he's a champion with the Heat, but some of his best years were with the Raptors.
No, that's respectable. And yeah, he before he made, he played fully in his prime, he was starting to go on that rise with the Raptors. So Bosh is definitely a respectable answer. And final question for you, because I was supposed to visit this summer, but now thanks to this virus, that's probably going to have to be postponed to 2021 on when I come to LA. Best spot to visit in LA?
Oh man, best spot to visit in LA. I'm biased with this again. I'm going to have to go with Zuma Beach. It is one of the most beautiful beaches in Southern California. It's my personal favorite. It's just a little bit past Malibu. It's a lot cleaner. It's a lot prettier. And let me tell you, if there's ever a day where I have some free time before, we're not supposed to go outside and all this nonsense. If there was a day where I had free time and I had a book with me, I would just go straight to Zuma Beach, sit out there for a couple hours and just read, do some editing, do some even just watching videos from my phone and just relaxing under the sun. One of the most beautiful areas that you could go visit. Guys, I'd like to say first off, thank you again to Luca for having me on his show, The Luca Rosano Show. And if you like what he's doing, please give him a like and subscribe at Luca Rosano. And check him out on all social medias, TheWaterboyReport and Luca Rosano. He's putting in a lot of work. He's hustling just like we all are right now. And if you guys like what we're doing here on my program, this is Get It Right with Alex Himes. Please give a like and subscribe on YouTube at Alex Himes, where you can catch all my shows from Get It Right to Don't At Me to Courtside Radio and all the latest and greatest things that we're putting out, as well as on all social media at HimesLA. That is HYMESLA, where you can keep up with my daily shenanigans and what's going on. For all of you guys tuning in right now, I'd like to wish you guys a staying happy, healthy. Please stay indoors. You are safer at home. Don't forget to wash your hands, both front and back, for 20 seconds. And I'm praying for all of you guys out there who are dealing with this sickness. Together we will overcome, and we will see a better tomorrow. And for that, I'll catch you guys next week.
Money isn't real. Doesn't matter. It only seems like it does.
Through training camp, I see.
Those are pretty damn good averages.
Hi, Alex Himes here, and it's time to get it right.